Hi everyone, it's Denise Brown from the Caregiving Years Training Academy. Thanks so much for being here with us today. Our Beginning Again retreat starts August 3rd, and over the next few weeks I'm going to introduce you to the presenters of our virtual retreat, which helps you heal after a family member's death. Joining me today is Deb Hallisey. Hi Deb, how are you?
Hi Denise.
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you as well. Thanks for asking me.
Oh, sure, of course, because you are on 2 panel discussions for our event, and both are really interesting. Let's talk about the career change panel discussion. You and Beth Surratt, who's also one of our certified caregiving consultants, will talk about how a caregiving experience really changed how you looked at work, your career. And then you decided not only to start a small business, but to do something that's still unusual in today's world, and that is start a small business focusing solely on supporting family caregivers. So for our attendees to that panel discussion, tell us a little bit about what we're going to learn.
So kind of like the story, like how did this come about? I will give you a teaser to say I lost my job due to caregiving issues, which is not a new story, but how I went from looking for something in my field to making the decision to leave has a lot to do with that whole journey and experience of being a caregiver, both first for my dad until we lost him, and now for my mom. It's a step out in faith. It has to be something that you feel absolutely passionate about. It's scary. And it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done.
Okay, that's an awesome teaser, because I think we all want that in our life, right? Our work that we spend during our day that really fulfills us, that feels like it's part of a purpose, that it's doing something for the greater good. The second panel discussion you're joining is really about grieving over a lifespan. And you and the other panelists are going to talk about what grieving is like for you now. And we're looking at it from the perspective that each of you is grieving over a certain period of time. So almost like this spectrum of how grieving can change for us. So how long has it been since your dad's death?
It's been a little over 5 years. We lost him in February of 2015. But I will say to you that the grief started the year before, when I knew we were on borrowed time with him. And so that kind of anticipatory grief is very, very real. And it's just very real. So it has changed. It really has changed over the last 6 years. So I will tell you, in the beginning, I was so focused on caring for mom that I didn't have a chance to grieve. And then the initial grief was just focused around, missing him. The holidays were the hardest. They really were. And I spent a lot of time going to visit him just to sit and talk, But what's surprising me about the grief in the last 5 years is it's not ever present, but it still will take me under like the water taking you under at the beach. And you just have to go with it when it happens.
I think there is this general idea that at some point in our lives, grieving ends, that somehow we just don't miss someone who was very important in our lives anymore. And the reality is, that is the furthest thing from the truth. Grieving remains with us for the rest of our life when someone who was very important to us is gone and doesn't spend the rest of our life with us. Wondering, when you think about this experience of grieving over these past 6 years, what has helped you the most manage it?
Well, I think there's 2 things. I really do. I think one of it is the recognition that grief now can come upon me very suddenly for reasons I didn't anticipate. I will tell you that a couple Christmases ago, 3 or 4 years after his death, it was a harder Christmas than the Christmas that we first lost him. And that was because I suddenly realized I'm not remembering him well. And the grief of losing who he was when he was well was heartbreaking. So I really had to consciously make the decision to think about him and talk about him when he was well. There's research that shows a traumatic event, like a death of someone, is what stays at the top of our head. And so we really have to concentrate on bringing the good times forward. In fact, I wrote about it on the blog when it happened. The other thing I will say, which is just so interesting, is it was actually starting this business. My dad and I bonded a lot around work. We talked about that. And at one point, in fact, we both worked for the same company. We go on sales calls together, which is just so crazy. And I just felt like he was and is with me throughout this entire journey. And that was incredibly healing.
Something that I'd like to remind anyone who's thinking about joining our virtual event is that you can join us if your family member died last week or if your family member died 5 years ago, because it's a process, and connecting to people who understand that process, regardless of where you are in that process, can be so helpful. And what I love about our retreat is this opportunity for us to connect and talk about an experience that we all have, grieving, which is not something most people want to talk to us about. So we have this intense emotional experience, oftentimes by ourselves. So why not get together and say, this is the reality of my experience right now, and that includes grieving. And I'm picking up the pieces and figuring out how I want to move on into the rest of my life. So Deb, for those of us who are watching and listening, who are thinking about joining us, what else would you add as to a reason to join us for our virtual retreat?
Well, I think if you're even thinking about it, I urge you to go out to the website and look at the topics, because there are so many topics that we're going to cover with people who have different experiences that I can guarantee more than one is going to really be something that you need to hear. So I would say, don't say, oh, I don't want, and the other thing I would say is people oftentimes don't grief is over here, like I don't want to touch it because then it'll bring it up. And yet in the talking about it, I found it healing. And so go out and take a look and dip your toes in it, because there's some really wonderful life experiences you're going to hear about.
We are doing different themes every day for our 5-day virtual retreat. For instance, one of our themes is our loose ends. There's a theme around our work. There's a theme around our house. So we're really trying to tackle all the different ways that you're going to experience grieving and trying to figure out, how do I move forward into the next stage of my life. So Deb, for our viewers and listeners who'd like to be in touch with you, what's your website address, and tell us a little bit about your business?
Sure. So my website is www, and that's Advocate for Mom and Dad, and every word is spelled out, advocateformomanddad.com. And it's really geared towards adult children of aging parents to help them on caregiving issues, and not just the practical about what's a financial, what's a durable power of attorney for finances, although that's definitely out there, but even a lot about the emotional journey and caregiving. My mom is very generous in letting us write about our experiences together. So that's one piece of it, and that is free and open to everyone. And then I also am part of our certified caregiving consulting group. And so I work with families kind of on two levels. I work with them on effective family communication, and grief is one of those things that we will touch upon. I will just share with you that it took a long time for my mom to be able to talk about my dad. And part of that was me slowly bringing that in and reminiscing. And now she can, in a way that's, I think, healthy for both of us. And I also work with families to help them find resources and empower them to be the best advocate they can. And as you know, kind of the third leg of this, really based off of my experience with caregiving is I published a book called Your Caregiving Relationship Contract. It's found on Amazon, and it really touches on how caregiving changes relationships. And if you're intentional about the way you handle things, it can not break the relationships, and it, in fact, can heal them.
Okay, that's awesome. I want to mention something too that Deb made me think of, and that is we are recording all of our sessions. So when you register to join us for all 5 days, you'll receive recordings of all the presentations throughout that 5-day period. So if you're not able to make every session, it's okay. You're going to get the recording for it too. And it might be that you are attending a session and you think, okay, this is really good information, but it's overwhelming to me right now. You can take comfort in knowing that you're going to get the recording and you can watch it at a time when you feel like, okay, I can absorb this. I can process this information. Okay, for information about our retreat, beginning again, go to careyearsacademy.com/retreat. And you'll find out all the information about our presenters and our agenda and how to register to join us. In addition, please know we have scholarships available. If registering just feels like a little tight for your budget, we understand. So let us know. We'd be happy to help, waive the cost of joining us with a scholarship. I'm Denise Brown. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.